Alright, response video. I think I'll do it in pieces, so I'll try to keep it under half an hour, which would probably be difficult, so I'll talk really fast. Well, what the... Anyway, anticontavad. Veganism and guilt. The guilt word again. He says in here, I did watch a little bit, first couple minutes, and he says something about having survived, me, my arguments. So, the arguments of the humility, having the humility to understand your limitations. He doesn't like that argument. Doesn't like the argument that it's just as easy to suppress your desire as it is to embrace your pain. So if you can control your pain, you should be able to control your desire. There's no rational argument to think those things are different. Obviously, rational people would think it's a lot harder to control your pain, actually. But anyway. Yeah, so don't be impacted by that in any kind of positive way. Be impacted in a negative way. So you make arguments about you don't have a right to draw straws for somebody else. That argument doesn't mean anything to him. You use somebody else for your gratification. You put them at risk because you enjoy watching the risk. So he was probably for TV shows that exploited poor people by offering a $10,000 prize if they cut their own hand off, or something like that. He'd probably say, yes, that's fine, good capitalist gameplay, because there's something in it for him. There's something in it for the audience. If there's an audience, the audience matters, the participants don't. That doesn't faze him at all. This staunch anti-communist. Has he actually met a real communist, right? He's just anti-communist in the sense of anybody who has any kind of social ideals. Obviously, Russia wasn't the perfect diagram of anything close to something called communism, in the sense that they obviously created just another branch of the monarchy, in a sense. This is just like the American Revolution. Everybody thinks it's about the working man and the rights of the people. No, it was just a bunch of American capitalists saying, what's in it for me? They didn't want the British to own everything. They wanted to own everything. It's really quite crass. And he veils all his shit as if this is some sort of real value that they have, this idea that there's a concept called fairness and we should strive to achieve it. Oh, what a horrible idea. He survived that. He didn't faze him. He was able to march right on that word fairness and give it a good trouncing. I mean, these people are disgusting. I mean, to gain your gratification, again, by drawing straws for somebody else's welfare. To have a child for your entertainment, and obviously if you're a rationally intelligent person, you know there's no other purpose to it but because you want to do it, because of some desire in you, not some need in the world. The world doesn't need your kid, and you goddamn know that. So he's basically for this whole idea that, yes, I'm allowed to make messes that I can't clean up. Something happens to me, I die, well, so what? The kid goes on welfare. No big deal. Somebody else will pay for my mistake. Kid's born retarded or broken, yes, you, the state, you pay for it. He's against communism, but I'm sure he's for those social safety nets that people who don't procreate have to pay for. He'll pull the money out of my pocket to pay for his kids' education and for his kids' health care, for his kids' protection against his wife and him dying. We have to pay those bills. He doesn't pay those bills. Anti-communist? No. Anti what's in it for me, that's all. He wants it in, whatever's in it for him is good. What's in it for somebody else, who cares? There's no principles involved here at all, except I'm a selfish cunt and I'm going to defend my selfish cuntery with a bunch of veiled, somehow I'm going to turn Darth Vader into a sympathetic character, blah, 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 blah. Fuck you. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, you just don't own other people's welfare. And if you're not humbled by taking on a responsibility like that, which obviously you're not, it's all a big part of the joke here, a big part of the cheese-eating fun. Yeah, it just shows you're an imbecile and an idiot. So anyway, in his comments, which is even kind of funny, besides his, I'm a staunch anti-communist, You know, it's this need to keep restating this over and over again, as if all communists, he knows what a communist is even. But anyway, you know, some asshole brought up the, well, you killed plants, you know, as a veganism argument. I mean, that's how dumb these people are. I mean, they can't make a distinction between a brain, a sentient feeling organism, and a plant. And you're just saying, wow. I mean, you know, I mean, there should be a kind of fascism that says nobody should have to have an argument with any asshole who can't tell the difference, can't realize the substantial difference between a plant and a sentient mammal. I mean, if they can't concede the fundamental substantial difference, they're just too stupid. They should have no voice in any conversation anywhere, because that's just too fucking stupid. That's his audience, though.
Prior to having kids, actually, prior to breeding, and you know, my dealings with the most negative of them all actually left me.
Yeah, whatever. The most negative. Negative in how? In that I advocate for the rights of things being harmed by your recklessness. Because you think you have a right to create problems you can't fix. That's the risk of it. You can't fix it. You create somebody broken. They live through the misery, the suffering, the torment. And you're not going to be able to fix it. You're not going to be able to undo it. There's no reverse buttons. So, I mean, by your philosophy, what? Why shouldn't people have... Would you make it legal for people to own nuclear power plants? The technology to have one in their backyard? Should they be able to have an M1 tank in their backyard? I mean, what risk are you allowing? You know, what risks with other people's welfare do you think are okay to allow people? Oh well, you know, somehow the market will take care of it. Somehow they'll be able to take responsibility. I mean, we have people right now, all these people with their gun ownership. There's a price paid for their gun ownership. We make it convenient to kill people, and people get killed. You can't undo it. Their lives are ruined. Lives of the survivors, anyway, are ruined. You know, you can't. There's no undo button. The liberty's expensive, and to have no humility in the face of that pain and suffering that's going to be the inevitable consequence of your philosophy of you're entitled. You haven't demonstrated how you are going to exercise this entitlement in any kind of rational way, that you have any plan at all to ensure that your child won't be tormented by this gift you have given him.
Confident enough to breed. So
yes, confidence. So he gains confidence by hearing about, you know, the metaphor that it's kind of like drawing straws for somebody else. And that, boy, I would be damn uncomfortable if I was in that position, where I sat in a comfortable chair and I just drew straws for other people and handed them to them. Said, oh, you get cancer. He's more confident. That metaphor has no effect on him. No, it doesn't humble him or scare him the least little bit. Yeah, sorry. I don't know how a decent, rational person wouldn't be a little humbled.
It's interesting that, you know, however...
We're on the subject of pain and suffering. That's what veganism is. And
however horrible they may come across to some people, and apparently this vegan thinks that they're pretty horrible. I think that they have their uses. You know, it's if you look at the...
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, okay, so you think in some way you're going to win the big picture argument with your what's in it for me, glib, laugh at other people's pain and suffering and the risk you take with their lives attitude. And yes, okay, the Trumpites and the rest of the losers and idiots on this planet might fall for some of that crap. The Muslims obviously will fall for anything. Humans are basically dumb motherfuckers, no doubt including your wife. Yeah, so that's the liability. But so be proud of yourself, though, that you have the intelligence to do so much better than what's in it for me, and somehow you can't manage it. You're such a selfish cunt. That this no logic percolates up saying, oh, I can do a lot better than that with my existence than to advocate for what's in it for me. But now you can't.
Moniker that I go by on my channel here, it's Anakantavad.
Right, and you've already explained it has nothing to do with anything. It's just a package of little pieces of ritual you've taken from different silly philosophies and said, oh, I like the bumper on that car and I like the windshield on that one, and you've slopped some slop together that's basically an idiot dance you do to say, I'm okay, you suck, I'll do what I want, I can't control my desire, but pain doesn't mean anything. Okay, fine. You're crazy.
Which is a term that is generally associated with Jainism, but it's not.
Right, exactly. It has nothing to do with Jainism at all, because you don't give a fuck about the welfare of anything. Yes, exactly. I mean, just an amazing statement right there.
Exclusive to it. You see it in many traditions. You see it in Buddhism, Hinduism, Sufism even.
Yeah, so he's hiding. You know, he's just wearing that cap. It's like Donald Trump and his "Make America Great" bullshit. Right, making billionaires, people who hoard wealth and basically rent it to the world. I mean, he's a renter. He's the big, you know, he's a $10 billion landlord, for fuck's sake. And people, you like landlords? You think that has a value somewhere? You don't think we should really get people to be owning their own homes, kind of thing? Be much better to do that than have people living in serfdom? Shit, you people suck. Alright, I'll play some of his video and then come back. Take notes and whatnot, maybe. Just so this doesn't go on. Can't go on forever, right? Oh, fuck it. I'll just make the video.
But I'm not a Jain. I just had some fish sushi today that my wife made for me, and it was very good. And if we go out.
Excellent. I hope keep eating that shit, because eventually you'll get food poisoning and hopefully die. So yes, keep eating that shit. I mean, really, it's just more. You're gonna feed your kid that too, that slop. Take some more risk. Oh, I don't care that it's like 69,000% more poisonous than a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Oh, but I'll go ahead and take the risk. Fuck the kid.
Tonight to dinner, it's there may be meat on the menu, so I'm certainly not a vegan or a Jain.
Yes, you're not an ethical, decent person, right? You just don't give a fuck, and the only thing you care about is what I'm in the mood for. And you can't control anything about your moods at all. You're indestructible. I could stick a knife in your side of your head and you're not going to feel a thing because of your magic powers. But you can't control a single fucking compulsion otherwise. Anything you desire, you must have. I must have the cheese. I put a piece of cheese out on the sidewalk, you will be drawn to it. You just can't help yourself.
But I've learned a great deal from dealing with these sorts of things.
I don't think you've learned anything. You're just as dumb could be. Dumb as a fucking rock. All your intelligence is pissed away because you can't figure out the difference between a sentient feeling organism and a stick.
Fascinating things that dealing with the anti-natalist set, the negative ones. Was this idea of...
Yeah, whatever. The positive ones are what? How exactly do you make this story of life and tragedy and horror and sadness a positive one? Okay, I don't know.
Ethics by denunciation.
Yes, that's exactly the whole point of ethics, is to figure out what is bad and to do something to stop it. Yes, so you kind of have to denounce the bad thing to have ethics. There's no ethics otherwise. So that's your part of the whole wordplay here. Part of the semantics game is just to make all the words mean nothing. So even the word ethics doesn't mean anything, because if ethics has something called denunciation in it, then it's not ethics. Can't have ethics otherwise, shithead. You really do have to make a distinction between right and wrong to have something called ethics, retard.
You don't really have to do anything except for denounce the bad people out there who are...
well, clearly people are denouncing the bad acts, so you want to confuse the act with the actor. Well, go ahead and play that game also, because that's what you're, that's all you're good at, is playing propaganda games, because that's the business you've been in. as one of the exploitnists.
Bad things. Now, this idea is as old as ethical thinking is. There are elements of this in the oldest of the Old Testament stories.
Again, so this is a dogma from God, okay? Talking about the welfare of feeling creatures on planet Earth and their fate and treatment is the same as talking about kissing the Pope's ring. They're both the same thing. They're both the same kind of integrity to why we do these things. They're not completely different subjects.
Of some, what Nietzsche would call an ascetic priest denouncing King David or something like this for his failure to be a good person. And, you know, it's a very old idea.
Yeah, well, King David was a bit of a fucking whore and pig and glutton, so yeah, lots to criticize there. That's kind of like the communists, the Russian communists. So no communist has a right to criticize the Russian communism and say they didn't do it very well. Why? Oh, because that would break your argument then. If the communists did that, then that would break your argument. Because you have to pigeonhole them and make them all the same thing.
As is the idea that life is a horrible thing. Again, my moniker, Anakantavad, is generally seen as a Jain idea, and the Jains kind of share certain aspects of the...
Look, I mean, the Jains are totally crippled by it, and he's pretending they're not. They're totally crippled by the dysfunctionality of life, the fact that you can't move without interfering and fucking things over, that the whole thing is a bloodbath, and so they have to wear, you know, sponges on their feet and, you know, masks on their face. The only way they can somehow live up to a decent representation of trying to be harmless, and it's not possible, and they're conceding it's not possible. So don't keep pretending they have anything to do with your what's in it for me philosophy, because they don't. For fuck's sake. I mean, it's just kind of tragic that the Jains couldn't muster up enough violence to sit there and say fuck you to you fucking cunt. But I mean, yeah, you're a bug worth stepping on. For that alone, for that crime alone, to sit there and pretend that you have something in common with a Jain is just so ludicrous.
Natalist philosophy with modern antinatalists, along with the Gnostics from the ancient world and even before that.
Yes, anybody who look, I mean, frankly, since man has existed, some human beings have been smart enough to figure out that this isn't a very good game we're playing. It's damn ugly, damn sloppy, it damn well sucks, and we need better rules. We need better rules to play by. But we're stuck, because our only choice is a knife to our own head. And that just seems like, shit, I'm already here. At least I can do is I can complain. But really, it shouldn't be my job to undo your mess.
The idea that the physical universe is horrible, or that life itself is a perversion of nature, or whatever, is all...
Well, whatever. I mean, clearly what we do know about human beings is that their excesses are undeniable. I mean, you had a baby, and in spite of global warming, in spite of an economy running on the future of that child's productivity mortgaged. Okay, the kid's life is mortgaged for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you think you did him a favor. I mean, he's on the hook for it. If we don't pay the debts, then you're going to violate the fundamental principles. If you pay them, you're going to have to create the gulag, and your kid's going to be in it. So bravo, asshole.
Also a very old idea. And it's interesting that, a lot of people haven't really sort of refined their own ethical thinking until they...
I mean, really, it's an old idea for every person who got the shitty end of sticks and whatnot. I mean, there's been people in history, I mean, they get married, 6 months later the wife gets breast cancer, she spends 6 months dying, and then they do surgery without anesthetic and all that. You can go back in history, horrible, horrible shit happened in wars, and it takes you weeks to die of your injuries. Just horrible stuff. And you witness some of that crap, and you're not a little bit fucking put off a little bit. You've really got to have enough of that for the rest of your eternity. I mean, sometimes people puke eating some kind of food and they'll never touch that food again for like hundreds of years. You watch your sister, your brother, or something. You watch people choking on it, puking up blood, and maybe, okay, you gain a little bit of, holy fuck, what the hell am I caught up in? But not you. No, not the anacondavat, because he's above all that.
Come across something like, or whatever.
I wish you'd come across a truck with Mac written on the front of it.
Where say vegans, sometimes if you think of PETA or whatever, they sometimes get a bit strident. I won't say that they all do. I have no reason to paint all vegans this way.
Well, you paint everybody else away, so I mean, why not? I mean, all commies are the same, so all vegans are the same, so all everything's the same, so whatever. I mean, that's all you do is play this pigeonholing game with broad concepts. So yeah, but everybody does know there's fanatics and not fanatics, and sometimes the fanatics are, sometimes fanaticism is good and sometimes it ain't. Most of the times it ain't. You got to be pragmatic, and yes, there's some vegans that aren't very pragmatic. And frankly, they're not very realistic, because all this passion over a tiny percentage of the horror taking place on Earth is kind of misdirected.
Or even most of them, or whatever, but I've just seen this kind of thing where, people just say it's so horrible, it's so unethical, it's so brutal that you're just a despicable human being if you eat meat or wear leather or anything like this.
Right, and I certainly wouldn't be in that category, correct? I mean, can we acknowledge that? I mean, I've basically said you don't even have to be vegan to be a defender of veganism, in the sense that the future should acquire these better habits. Even advocating that the future acquire better habits, that we wean ourselves off of this silly, stupid dependency. It's not a dependency, it's a psychological problem, not a physical problem. So yeah, nothing fanatic in my rhetoric. And clearly I've said over and over again, it's a tiny fraction. It's a band-aid on malignancy. It's such a small gesture, but it's the only gesture we have. It's the only thing we individually can control. So we can make that individual statement almost like your meditation, as discipline that makes us better people, because it makes us conscious every day, and makes us aware of what game we're really playing, and that it's not a good game.
Okay, along come the ethelists, and they turn the tables on them. The denouncers are in turn denounced. Ethics by denunciation.
Again, you can't have ethics without a recognition of right and wrong, good, bad. It's not possible to have ethics otherwise. So, I mean, it's just the silliest concept that denunciation is the most harmless way of exercising ethical principles. I will voice my opinion. So this is a guy, right, who'll talk about fascists, the gulags, the commies, and he doesn't want me to complain. He doesn't think I have the right to voice my opinion and merely state I think something's wrong. Ooh.
And, we know where that leads. It's, the old thing that the French revolutionary, I forget who it was, said the revolution is like Saturn in that it devours all of its own children. The French Revolution kind of began as a denunciation of the French upper classes, and then the denouncers all denounced each other, and next thing you know, the greatest grand denouncer of them all, or supposedly, Robespierre, is climbing the steps of...
Yeah, and what's wrong with that? I mean, you clean house pretty good then, don't you? Yeah. There's plenty of liars in the Congress, plenty of those people belong in jail.
Guillotine himself. It really brings one's ethical thinking out into sharp relief, I think, when you get the idea of you shouldn't do that because it's a bad thing to do, and only bad people do that. And
okay, recognizing again that there's no distinction about what a right or a wrong is, or no distinction about a good state or bad state, or no distinction about a reckless, stupid risk. So, yes, if you drink and drive, you're doing something that's bad, taking risk with other people's welfare. And if you do it over again and over again and over again, you're a bad person. It's just a truth. Fuck.
you know, that kind of thing. It's an interesting sort, and I particularly appreciate the fact that it takes on the dimensions of a religion to some people, because it's a question of blind, visceral.
Yeah, where is there any blindness in this subject? I mean, there's all this articulation, thousands of videos, long videos, explaining and detailing, going through the logic and the reasoning, the metaphors, the Frankenstein metaphor. I just gave you a couple of the drawing straws metaphor. All this explanatory content connected with it. There's no blindness here. There's no statements from on high, you will believe it because I said so. No, I'll say exactly the opposite. I'll say I'm an asshole. If you don't understand what I'm saying, then don't pay any attention, because understanding's all there is. Fuck. It's about the understanding. That's it. I mean, if I wanted it to be inmendhamism, I would have called it inmendhamism. I called it ephilism. Because it's about life. It's not about inmendham. Duh.
Belief that they will, you know, defend and persist in with all the zeal of any other kind of religious fanatic. Of the denunciators.
Right, this is the guy who, again, calls himself Anticontavad, steals from all kinds of religions, and he's going to turn that table and somehow accuse the atheist of being religious. He's the one who can't call himself an atheist. Doesn't know what to call himself, doesn't know what to believe. And yet he will imply that somehow my philosophy is based on a dogma dug up from some authority, when it's just a simple statement that I'm conceding the existence through evolution of sentient mammalian brains, and that they are currently in states that I wouldn't, if it was my rat, I wouldn't let him live that life.
You know, the thundering Old Testament prophet, or the evangelical Christian pastor from the 19th century who is just out to tell you that you are a bad person and you must prepare to meet.
Again, where's this personal person aspect of this conversation? The conversation's always been focused on the events that take place. and the simple proposition that it's been explained to you that it's reckless and stupid and this and this and this. It has nothing to do with bad personing anybody. It has to do with real prevention, shithead. Amazing.
Thy God. Same thing. It's
not even close. So I'll just call you a grotesque liar. I mean, that paraphrase is just too silly to be dignified by anything but calling it what it is, a lie. It's just, you're just lying about people to imply that they're somehow imposing a dogmatic religious edict. Bullshit. That's not what evolution is, and it's not what evolution taken to its logical conclusion is.
I think that mentality is always going to be with us. And it's kind of neat, though, as I say, I said that I found that my dealings with the antinatalist types that are particularly negative have helped me. Because...
Yeah, again, and why? Because they brought up this subject of suffering and harm, and look at him, he's just gleeful. Gleeful. He is gleeful. So the subject of risking imposing harm on your own kid even is something to be gleeful about.
occasionally I run across vegans who denounce, and I say, oh yeah, well, let me just denounce you. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, you hadn't thought of that, had you? Because, it always, there's always somebody who's more rigorous in their ideological adherence than you are. That's just the way denunciation.
Oh, there isn't always, but regardless, again, so just, like that would mean anything. I mean, if you have a principle of, let's all not jaywalk or something. And yes, now and then, okay, there's reasons that you got to get across the street quick, blah, 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 and you break the rules on those circumstances. No big deal. I mean, we know there's a ton of circumstances where there's a principle, an ideal, and you make a best effort to get there. Happens all the time. Happens at work all the time. People try their best. Sometimes they fail. Nobody sits there and cuts their heads off. So, more bullshit.
Works. You can always get outflanked by somebody who accuses you of being lax in your moral fiber or whatever.
Right, and go ahead and you get the accusations all the time about something, and my argument is I'm doing the best I can, so I don't have any other argument I have to make. I really don't. I'm not, so go ahead and make your accusations, silly man. They're not going to stick. They're not going to have any integrity. They're just going to be silly. So go ahead. Take your best shot. Oh, you already did. Well, what was it? I'll imply that I became more evil through interaction with you. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't believe that. I think you were pretty evil to start with, fella.
Another interesting thing that came up, I was talking to Johnny Nomates, I think he's called in the comment section, where I'm dealing with my favorite one, where they have determinism and personal responsibility or guilt, or I don't know what you should call it, obligation, moral imperatives or whatever. I would say that, well, if you actually believe in or subscribe to the idea of determinism, or at least as I understand it, say...
Right, he doesn't understand determinism at all. Determinism doesn't really mean anything. Yes, everything we are going to do is inevitable, but the inevitability is first unseen by us, and second must move through us. We actually have to learn 2 + 2 = 4. See, and then 2 + 2 = 4. And then if somebody says, well, here's a test, and you're going to be right or wrong means something. Something's welfare is at stake, so lying isn't really an option. Because they get harmed if you just lie. So 2 + 2 = 4. You have no choice. It's been determined by the fact that you have learned something. And so that's what we're the byproduct of, is education, knowledge, reasoning, logic. And those things must be obeyed for that determinism to be realized. And so your fake argument that somehow there's a fate, you will play the piano, but you don't have to learn to play the piano, can't happen. Just as people who become intelligent and sensible and reasonable can't become unreasonable.
Hard determinism or whatever. All your actions are determined. You can't do other than what you were determined to do. That seems to take all autonomy out of your hands. And in fact, I might even argue that seems to sort of...
Right, and all autonomy doesn't mean anything because there's no such thing as a you to autonomize. There's your brain. And your brain as a collective thing learns, and it learns 2 + 2, and then it becomes now inevitable that you'll say 4 when asked the question, because you have the answer. That's the determinism. Sensibility and reason and logic and intelligence will win this determinism battle, unless you're an idiot and just do the anti-thing for the purpose of being anti. Because you've learned somewhere I'm supposed to be anti from some idiot.
Negate your own identity, and it actually...
Your own identity. Negate your own identity. Like that has something to do with, you can determinismally negate your own identity, and your own identity is what? Exactly. Oh, that's right. Men are made to rape. Oh, okay. Sure they are.
in many ways negates the idea of identity itself. I don't think that, say, determinism and identity are compatible.
So what he's saying is, I don't think intelligence and identity are compatible. So determinism has nothing to do with this. He doesn't like intelligence causing there to be logical conclusions. And some of those logical conclusions are, hey, drinking and driving is bad, and that if you do it, you're bad. That logic, no, 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 no. So he's anti-intelligent. He's not anti-determinism.
Because, you see behind me a room. Well, all that is matter, energy, and empty space.
Yeah, more of this energy, empty space, blah, 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 and let's just ignore the fact that the value is created by the sentient organism's experience. If there's a planet with no animals on it, yes, we don't really worry if it turns into, it liquefies. Or, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter what it does as long as it doesn't blow up and spill on us. We're just pretty much indifferent to its welfare because it's a fucking planet. It doesn't have a sentient brain. Gee. So again, if you have to go back this far and explain this something this simple, that value is created by the welfare of feeling things. When you put feeling things on a planet, then it becomes an interesting subject. What happens to them?
This phone that I've got in my hand that
I'm not a phone. I know that's hard for you to believe, but I'm not a fucking phone.
Filming myself on is matter, energy, and empty space, and all those
right. Your son is not a phone. It's just not.
Atoms are as old as the universe, or whatever. And they just reconfigured themselves and will continue to reconfigure themselves forever and ever and ever and ever.
Says you again. I say the photons are flying into empty space and are never coming back, so they'll never come back.
So, identity itself, what are these atoms that are this room, or what are the atoms that are this phone, or that are me itself? These atoms are just different reconfigurations that will continue to reconfigure.
Right, and again, what does that have to do with anything? I mean, really, I could go figure out where the plastic came from on the front bumper of your car. Does it have anything to do with the fact that your car is a car? No.
Themselves ad infinitum and go back to the Big Bang and go forward to whatever resolution the universe has.
The resolution is just, you're all gonna die. That's the resolution. It's over, and it's unwritten, essentially. It's wiped all the fuck out, except for the fact that it all fucking happened. Dead motorcycle, dead guy. Yeah.
Identity seems to sort of cease in that context. You need to have something external to the physical universe, or to any universe, or...
No, you don't need any of that. You just need some sort of ability to do a little tiny bit of biological kind of science and recognize that evolution took place, DNA molecule, the invention of a neuron, the neurons create this manifestation, this syndrome of consciousness. And that through personal experience you can say, no matter what it is, doesn't fucking matter what the fuck it is something. It's something goddamn happening. Consciousness is a something very different than all the other somethings, and it definitely creates value. I mean, yes, it was just meant to synthesize value, but it created it instead. See, somebody keeps making, another asshole in the comments made some comment about, why would biology need to make pain? And Dawkins says, why does it have to be painful? And blah, 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 blah. Nature's not smart. So nature doesn't know that pain is painful. Nature doesn't know that suffering is bad. Okay, so nature didn't know it created real value. Nature doesn't know anything. Nature isn't a brain thinking and creating and designing. It's a sloppy, progressive system. And so it did it the sloppiest way, not the best way. Most of your chromosomes are for making fins and scales and shit. You're full of redundancy and artifact. Nature's not a brilliant designer, idiot.
Other than, or operating perhaps on a different level. than hard determinism for identity to exist.
Identity. Again, identity is a byproduct of your environment. Yes, we're all byproducts. We're all reactions to actions, but we create actions in terms of those reactions. We either react to information, facts, and their logical implications, and we react in a sensible way and add the 2 plus the 2 and come up with 4. You find out you're in a very, very, very dangerous game. You got to play the game carefully because there's stakes involved. There is outcomes, and then your behavior gets measured and balanced by that intelligence. You're just sitting there and saying, I don't want to bother with being intelligent because it implies responsibility and accountability. I don't want that because I'm a selfish cunt. I want what's in it for me, and I want it now, and I just don't give a fuck. And that's as simple as your philosophy has become. You've wasted a great deal of intelligence to turn into a complete and utter imbecile. And the fact that assholes applaud that just magnifies the tragedy, just adds insult to the injury. So anyway, I'm running out of time on this camera, so we'll just cut it here, and maybe we'll come back and do a part 2. See how it goes. But man, he deserves an opera. Fuck you. So fucking hard and ugly. Man, you just suck. Really isn't that hard to do this little simple mathematics and figure out you don't have control, and therefore you don't have rights. No steering wheel on the car, you don't turn the car on. Not complicated. Really not complicated.